Welcome back to our Women's Health Summit. Well, some of you may have just been watching the entire thing, so thank you, thank you. I'm Shamika Rhymes. Thank you again for joining us as we close out this powerful evening of conversations in honor of Women's Health Month. So we're ending strong on a topic that deeply affects our community, diabetes in Black women. And Black women are not only more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes, but they also face greater complications and barriers to care. So tonight we're going to unpack everything you need to know from the different types of diabetes to risk factors, symptoms, mental health connections, and how to make realistic lifestyle changes that honor our culture and support our well-being. So remember to share this with your network and drop any questions that you may have in the chat because we'll answer any of those as we go along tonight. So let me introduce you to tonight's amazing panel. Dr. Christine Parker Curling. She is a board certified doctor in internal medicine, endocrinology, diabetes and metabolism, and also obesity medicine. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. And then we've got Mayat Petrova, a renowned feminine wellness coach, sensuality expert, and the founder of Fem Magic. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So you guys, we are bringing it home tonight with such an important topic. I've seen so many people, even just on social media, talking about diabetes. So I thought it'd be important and a great way to kick this off by asking, why do you think it is so important to center women, particularly Black women, in conversations about diabetes? And so I think the way we'll do this is I'll just throw the question out there and whoever wants to answer can answer. So, but to start us off, I can pick someone to start. So Dr. Parker Curling, let's start with you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So why is it so important to talk about diabetes in Black women and center the conversation around this particular population of patients? It's important because I think, like you mentioned, we are at higher risk for developing diabetes, and some of that is related to our genetic predisposition. Some of that is related to the environments in which we function and live. And some of that is related to culture in terms of late diagnosis, delays in diagnoses, access to healthcare, or even curiosity about our healthcare. And even in, scenarios where we tend to maybe put ourselves on the back shelf in favor of caring for the people that we are responsible for, very often we miss the opportunity to intervene early on when we would have that golden window to prevent the development of complications from diabetes. So we're the center of many communities, and I think it's time to remind us that it's important to invest in our well-being.
Thank you. Mayat, how about you?
Well, according to the CDC, Black women are 1 in 4 times likely to have diabetes, especially compared to white women, in particular, or non-Hispanic white women. And I think that it's important for us to have this conversation because I'm sure everyone watching can say that they know someone who has diabetes, who's in their family, who's close to them. And there are so many risk factors that we experience disproportionately because we are Black women. Poor access to healthcare, as Dr. Parker Curling stated, we have high responsibilities. There's a lot of single parent homes, so we have to be responsible for so many things, putting ourselves on the back burner. Genetics, there's so many risk factors, and it's close to home. So it's an important conversation for us to have.
Thank you. So, Dr. Parker Curling, let's break down the differences between, can we start with pre-diabetes and then go into type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes and how women are impacted by each of those?
Yeah. Okay. So like we addressed already, the prevalence of diabetes, incidence of diabetes is excessively high in our populations. Right. So I will start maybe with giving a basic definition of what diabetes is. Diabetes is a metabolic disorder where you have a decreased ability to metabolize the carbohydrates or the sugars in your diet. So you eat, you chew, you swallow, you digest, you absorb the foods and the nutrients. And one of those nutrients is sugar, okay? Whether you consume the sugar directly or whether the starches that you consume are broken down into sugar. And so once you get this sugar into your circulation, you've absorbed it from your gut and it moves into your blood vessels. There is a hormone called insulin that is supposed to come along and escort the sugars that you've eaten out of your circulation, move it into the muscles and tissues where you use it for energy. So diabetes is a condition where a couple of things might happen. Number one, in type 1 diabetes, you no longer manufacture insulin. So the pancreas is the organ that produces insulin. And a patient who develops type 1 diabetes, for various reasons, including, inflammation of the pancreas, it ceases the production of insulin. So this particular person eats, chews, swallows, digests, absorbs their nutrients, gets the sugar into the bloodstream, but can't get the sugar out of their blood vessels and into the muscles because they lack insulin. These types of diabetes tend to develop, or that particular type of diabetes begins to develop usually early on, much younger, typically in children. In type 2 diabetes, you have the same process going on where you've gotten the sugars into your circulation, but the problem here is that your insulin is inefficient or ineffective, or you are resistant to the action of insulin. So a key phrase that you will hear about commonly when you're reading about diabetes is insulin resistance. So you are resistant to the action of insulin, and in turn, your body tries to compensate for this by producing more insulin. So when I speak to patients, I try to illustrate it as if you were deaf or a little bit hearing impaired. I might shout a little bit louder until I can help you to hear me. So in the presence of inefficient action or inefficient receptiveness to insulin's action, you will make more insulin. The problem with that is insulin causes changes in your body that makes you even more resistant to insulin. So it perpetuates itself. And then gestational diabetes is a condition that develops exclusively in pregnancy. And so typically we screen for the development of diabetes in pregnancy, and it is a risk factor for developing diabetes later on in life. So those are, in a nutshell, the three simple categorizations of diabetes. You're not making insulin, you're resistant to insulin, or you develop further insulin resistance that manifests as diabetes in the context of pregnancy.
Okay. Thank you for the breakdown of that, because I think that's helpful to know like what each thing means. And this question is for both of you. What are the risk factors for diabetes that women may not recognize? And so either one of you could jump in.
Okay. Obesity is actually one of the risk factors. Black women are 50% of Black women are obese. So that's one of the risk factors. Food deserts. What else? We already mentioned genetics.
Right, family history.
PCOS is another risk factor in which, because I deal with feminine care, I normally deal with women who have PCOS. Yes, those are some.
Okay.
I agree.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if there were any more. Yeah, I was trying to think if I've ever heard of any others, but I think that sums it up. So how does diabetes uniquely, and I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, but how does diabetes uniquely affect Black women biologically, socially, and systemically? And I'm just throwing that one out there to both of you as well.
Okay, I'll start, but I'll start by circling back to the initial question, which was, I think I missed prediabetes, I missed prediabetes when I defined it, and I might give the technical term because maybe people are encountering lab results and I'm not quite sure how to interpret them. So in the simplest form, I will say that prediabetes is a condition where you are becoming resistant to insulin. Your blood sugars are above normal, but they don't quite reach a diagnostic criteria for diabetes. The reason I circled back to that is because we talked about risk factors for developing diabetes and why is this, what are the consequences that make it more pronounced or have more adverse outcomes in our population. Prediabetes is an important diagnosis to make because it highlights the window of opportunity to act and to prevent the development of diabetes in the first place in our population and in any population. So I find that I encounter a lot of people who might have sought my care for other diagnoses. And when I review labs, I'm like, okay, let's stick a pin. Do you realize that you're pre-diabetic? And the reason that's important is because if we ignore it for 3 to 4 years, one day the doctor will say, oh, you're diabetic. And then you look at yourself and say, well, where did this come from? I've been doing annual physicals for 5 years. Did a switch turn? And now we'll go back to the second question. So I just wanted to highlight, ask the questions. Ask the questions when you go to the doctor. What do my results mean? And if I have an abnormal result, what is my action plan? I want to defer to you to maybe, if you want to repeat the question to make sure we stay on course.
Absolutely.
Go back and forth.
Okay, absolutely. How does diabetes uniquely affect Black women biologically, socially, or systemically?
Also, systemically, we tend to go to the doctor when something is wrong as opposed to preventative medicine. So that pre-diagnostics can occur because we're not going to the doctor.
Precisely.
So, and also systemically, we don't have proper access to good foods, holistic foods. We don't have Whole Foods on our corners. We have liquor stores on our corners. So that is another systemic issue for why Black women are more predisposed to diabetes.
Physiologically, I will call upon a point that you made about one of the risk factors for diabetes in our populations being polycystic ovarian syndrome. In the polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is probably grossly underdiagnosed, and perhaps more so in our populations, these patients develop hormonal abnormalities that predispose us to excessive body weight, which calls upon what you mentioned also about excess body weight and obesity being prevalent in our populations and also being a significant risk factor for the development of diabetes. So we have higher proportions of polycystic ovarian syndrome, and these these conditions predispose us to hormonal imbalances like PCOS, and I think awareness. So even beyond access, I think forums like this are important socially because it essentially gives us free access to excellent professionals like, my present company here who's emphasizing the fact that, lifestyle. I'm sure she'll chime in about lifestyle and choices. And even in the absence of, let's call of better food choices, I think we should start making each other aware of the importance of something as simple as walking. And even like doing it in our small environment, because then you're going to say, well, so socially, are we safe? Is it okay in our neighborhood to just get up and say we're going for a walk? So we have to start thinking you got to put on the internet and you got to find some YouTube video and you have to move. So culturally, we don't move. We might be afraid to walk for exercise in our environment. We might be working 3 jobs and we're tired. We don't have necessarily the money to go to the gym and the fitness club. So there's physiological, psychological, economic, so many factors that I think we have to bear in mind when we're tackling a problem that is wreaking havoc really on our population and our families.
Absolutely. I was just thinking that when you mentioned maybe walking at home on my Celebration show, Grow with Joe, she was just talking about that. She created all of her videos so that they can be done in small spaces in your home, 3 miles, 5 miles. Joe will put you through it. So you should check those out. I do see a question in the chat from Sharice Grant Barnes. She wants to know, is perimenopause a predisposing factor for women who have been labeled pre-diabetic for about 10 years?
I'll let Doctor have that one.
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, that's a tricky one. And I would probably tackle that by saying perhaps indirectly. Why I say that is in the perimenopausal and menopausal state where we have these hormonal imbalances, it can cause changes in our bodies. It can cause increased fat distribution, decreased muscle mass. And we know that the presence of excess body fat, whether or not we're small or conventionally what is referred to as big or heavy or overweight, we can be small people and still have risk factors for developing insulin resistance and diabetes. So I will say traditionally in a textbook, I would probably not see menopause and that menopausal transition as a risk factor for diabetes. But if the body changes are occurring that increase your fat distribution, increase your insulin resistance, then by some mechanism, yes, it can increase the risk of developing diabetes. So we try to recommend that patients do a lot of weight resistance training in the house with the corned beef can or whatever you're doing. Use what you have access to try to improve your muscle mass during that transition. And that can help us to minimize the amount of weight that we put on as we go through the golden stages of life.
Yes. And I'm going to say, but before we did this show, I was with my little 5-pound weights. Like, I got to get this workout in real quick before I sit down, because if I wait till later, I'm going to be tired.
Yeah, tired. Tired.
So what role does family history, we touched on it just a teeny bit, but what role does family history and community health play in the diabetes risk?
You wanna?
What role does, excuse me?
Family history and community health play in diabetes risk?
Okay, so I would say culturally in families, based on the diets that are passed down, high carb, high sugar diets, a lack of cruciferous vegetables, lack of fruits, lack of fresh produce, high meat diets, all of these can cause the risk of diabetes as well. So culturally, family, and genetics, but I'll let Dr. Parker Curling talk about the genetic element. However, really family-wise, the foods and the way we eat, it's not always the healthiest.
Right. So she did a great job of kind of discussing the risk factors, like you said, family history versus environmental factors. So when we talk about medical disorders in general, we talk about non-modifiable risk factors and modifiable risk factors. So non-modifiable risk factors means this is referring to things that you can't change. You were born with these risk factors. It's a part of your genetic predisposition. Mom, dad, 3 aunts, 2 uncles, 6 cousins had diabetes. You have a high risk of developing diabetes because of different genes and different other components of your genetic makeup, right? So those things you cannot control. That's the gift they gave you. The things you can control are the cultural things that we participate in, the way we prepare our meals, the way we integrate exercise and the healthy choices into our diet, the way we teach our children, the way we teach our friends, our families. What do we do at family gatherings? So culturally, environmentally, genetically, these risk factors are present, but the only thing we have power to control really is the things that we can modify. So they all play a role. One of them, maybe look at your family history. If everybody has it, it's chasing you. So then you go online, you say, what can I do to decrease my risk of developing diabetes? Choose 3. Start small and implement the things that are low-hanging fruit. Find the things that you can do, that you can implement, that you could be successful at. And when you do those things, it gives you positive reinforcement. You're like, okay, I can walk for 10 minutes. I can't walk for an hour because I don't have time, but I can walk for 10 minutes twice in a day. And when you do that, you're like, boy, maybe I should try to walk for 12. So find the thing that you are likely to be able to be successful at and modify it and do it.
I do see a comment from Rosie Mae Robinson Campbell. She says her A1C went up after she had COVID-19. And before that, her A1C was normal. So since having COVID, she's having problems getting it down. But she also mentions all the great, amazing things she's doing, exercise and eating healthy. But she does say her mother and several brothers and sisters have diabetes. So is it the family history here? Like, I think this is a great example of what we were just talking about, family history.
To be honest,
chasing her?
I would know what her diet and her family's diets are like,
Yeah.
before answering that question, because that's to me what it's going to boil down
Mm.
onto.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's probably a bit of both. It's probably a
Hmm.
bit of both.
Hmm.
So I would say for her, the most important thing that she's doing right now is checking. Because, like we said before, a lot of times we're not even checking. So if she's checking, she can continue to modify the behaviors to try to improve the A1C or consider medications if it's necessary.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, since we're talking about checking, what screenings or tests should women be requesting when they do go to the doctor? And how often should they be asking for these screenings, doctor?
Okay. Fine. No problem. So in terms of an annual physical exam, I think generally annual physical exams have the basic same components. If you do an annual physical exam, for the most part, they will examine you, listen to your heart and lungs, and do some basic blood tests. That will
Mhm.
include your blood count. We call it CBC. So that will screen for things like anemia or low blood count. If they do an annual physical, they will do a metabolic panel. So you'll go to the clinic, and they might send you to the lab fasting. So you're nothing to eat after midnight. You go first thing in the morning. They check your blood count. They check your kidney and liver. And in the metabolic panel, it includes a blood sugar. A fasting blood sugar is one of the screening tests for diabetes. Also, they usually would check your cholesterol. Usually would check your urinalysis, a pap smear mammogram if you're at a certain age, and if you're a man, probably a prostate specific antigen, PSA. In terms of what numbers should you look at, I probably will go with a fasting blood sugar example. A normal blood sugar should be less than 100. Okay, should be less than 100. 100 to 100. So 99 and below is normal. 100 to 125 pre-diabetes. 126 and above would be a diagnosis of diabetes based on the fasting blood sugar. But there are other blood tests that you can use to screen, like she talked about the A1C.
Mhm.
And 5.7 to 6.4% is pre-diabetes. 6.5 and above would be diabetic range hemoglobin A1C. So if you're going specifically for an annual physical, at least the fasting blood sugar will screen for diabetes. If you're at high risk, we might recommend to do an A1C also. So I would say present yourself for an annual physical, express your concern for diabetes, and they will probably add on the hemoglobin A1C test.
Okay. Thank you. So this is, I guess, this one's for both of you as well. What does balancing the sugar, what does balancing the sugar look like in daily life realistically? How can we balance sugar?
We can begin by trading the soft drinks and sugary coffees for water, or getting your juice straight out of a fresh fruit. You can switch some carbs, bread, for instance. Sometimes I'll eat a sandwich with I'll take the other half of the bread off and just eat the sandwich, even though, it doesn't have a cover, but I'm going to eat it like a pizza, if you will.
Oh,
Taking one piece of the bread off, that's realistic. But if you really want to be committed to your health, you would just replace the bread with salad.
mhm.
So yeah, those are some ways that we can improve realistically.
Yeah,
That
I
sounds
agree.
good. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I agree. I agree. An
Mhm.
open face sandwich. That's what
Yeah,
we
that
call
was a
it.
good. That
Sandwich.
sounds
I
good.
agree.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's what we call it.
Now, can you still have coffee though? Just maybe change what you're putting in it.
Well, I stated, just getting rid of the sugar
Right.
element.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, so, what are some manageable lifestyle changes that women can start doing today to improve that blood sugar control? We mentioned what they could do as far as like, more water, drinking actual juice from the fruit, some exercises. What other things can they do? This is for both of you.
Well, I think that one of the biggest factors brought up today is inactivity.
Yeah.
It's a high risk factor with diabetes. So how can you improve your movement? Get an app to see how many steps you've taken
Yeah.
daily.
Yeah.
Take the stairs instead of the escalator. This is realistic. You
Yeah.
can do this every day. Walk somewhere instead of driving if it's walkable. So those are things you can do day to day, but then you want to get into actually putting time aside, as you stated. You may not have an hour, as I think Dr. Parker mentioned earlier. You may not have an hour, but you might have 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
20 minutes on the Stairmaster is hell. So, find some time, at least 20 minutes to get some activity in daily.
Mm-hmm. It's great
Yes,
advice.
I agree. And I think I'm going to repeat one of the things you said, which is avoiding the sugar sweetened beverages. We really underestimate how much sugar we're consuming when we drink a can or a bottle of a sugar sweetened beverages or certain energy drinks that are laden with sugar. And the commercially available coffee beverages, you might want to, I negotiate with some of my patients. They have to make their stop and they're not going to stop making their stop. And I say, okay, if you're getting something medium sized, ask them how many pumps of flavor go into your coffee beverage. If it's 5 pumps, you don't need 5. Tell them to drop it to 3. Once you get used to 3, drop it to 2. And you'll be amazed how sweet what you are consuming still is. And I always tell patients that what we eat is learned. So you learned to like the things that you like because that's what was introduced to you. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have to relearn. We have to relearn and retrain our body and be very intentional about it. And so I will stick a pin in the the sugar sweetened beverages, and the flavored coffee drinks that you don't have to eliminate, but you have to start to modify. And then things like rice, potato, bread, pasta, corn. These are the hidden sugars. And if you're having a portion, it shouldn't be bigger than your fist. And in my population, I I explain to them it's not a fist each. So we like potato salad, we like macaroni, we like peas and rice, and we like our protein covered in barbecue sauce, and we like corn. And I said, okay, first of all, corn is not a vegetable. Okay, stop it. And then secondly, when I when I tell you a fist size carbohydrate serving, it's not a fist of potato salad, a fist of peas and rice, a fist of whatever macaroni pie you're eating. The whole carbohydrate fits in your fist. And it
Yes.
sounds crazy, but what I do, I say, well, if you eat this much, start eating that much.
Mm.
Drop it a little bit. After a week or two, drop a little bit more and maybe replace it with a lean protein and a little bit more veg. Because you don't want to walk away hungry. If you're walking hungry, you're either going to be miserable or you're going to eat again. So we're going to redistribute the nutrients on your plate to be more protein and veggie heavy and less carbohydrate heavy. You could do those things even if you have to do it slowly.
Mhm.
You agree?
I 100% agree. You'll be surprised that, it may sound impossible right now, especially if you're addicted to these foods. It's the way you've been eating for decades.
Yeah.
But be surprised the more you wean yourself
Right.
off, decreasing the proportions, your palate will change.
Mhm.
You will be able to taste the sugar and the amount of sugar in something and know that this is too much sugar. Your palate will become more sensitive.
Right.
These toxins in the food and the sugars and, so your palate will actually help you.
Yeah, you create a new normal. You create a new normal. And let's just start as simple as if you insist on having juice, you dilute it. And let's just say you were at a party, at a little thingy, and then after, I don't know, 6 weeks of going half and half with your juice and water, somebody handed you a can of juice and you drank it. You would be like, well, you would probably be blown away at how sweet and syrupy it tastes because you've relearned, you've created a new normal for yourself. So in the things you have control over, let's start to be intentional as women, as community members, as people at higher risk for complications. We haven't even gotten there yet. We have only spoken about the risk of developing diabetes in the first place being elevated, but the risk of complications is also going to be higher for many other social and medical reasons. But we'll come back to that when you
We can barely see you. You're behind your name. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I kind of shifted and I,
Yeah, I sent you a message, but I was like, she probably didn't see it.
there you go.
um,
Thank you.
yes. So we have a question from Charlotte. She says, are there natural herbs that you can take to help with prevent diabetes? Do you guys, are you aware of any, either of you?
I think detoxing, getting any kind of detoxing herb that can unblock your colon, to help with the absorption of nutrients, uh, any kind of detoxifying herbs. There's something called the ballerina tea, something like that, just to flush out your system. They sell it in local groceries. That's a detoxing herbal tea that someone can start with, that everyone has access to. And then, there are more elaborate detox teas that once you do research, you'll have access to. But things like turmeric and ginger and um, fenugreek, these are herbs that can help with prevention as well.
Yeah, so that is a question that comes up a lot. And I've had to make myself aware, I suppose, of certain things that are common, that people commonly use. I would say three things about it. Don't count them though, because I'll say some things about it. The first thing I'll say is, if we're looking for natural ways to prevent the development of diabetes, I will say, firstly, more so than supplementing, let's try to eat a little bit better. So let's try not to counter what we are doing by
Smart.
doing other things.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah. So we'll counter what we're doing by changing what we're consuming. So make the plate a little greener. Yeah, if it has to be the cheapest lettuce, let it be the cheapest lettuce. Put some lemon and some vinegar and some balsamic or something on that and spice that up and cut a few tomatoes, so you don't have to get the fancy stuff, but change what the plate looks like. And so we're doing the things already that stop us from having to take the supplements to combat, really, outside of the things that we can change, like our genetics, combat the things that we're doing to ourselves. So educate yourself. Supplements. So I have, obviously, as a board certified endocrinologist, et cetera, we don't train in naturopathics. And so initially we are very resistant to these things because we just don't know toxic doses. When I explain my things to patients, I say, okay, fine. You're going to do what you're going to do. Better you're doing it in partnership with me than you just out there doing it. So people, like you said, people say, well, cinnamon, there's studies showing that cinnamon can be beneficial for improving insulin resistance, and ginger and turmeric are anti-inflammatory, and berberine. People like berberine to improve their insulin resistance. And I say, fine. I don't necessarily have randomized control trials, but once I don't know of something to be overtly harmful to you, I will walk with you on this journey. Sometimes I insist that you take my stuff along with your stuff, because they're going to do it anyway. So we might as well be doing this together. So the two things I insist on is, number one, you hold your herbal remedy or your combination of my stuff and your stuff to the same standards, the same objective standards. We're looking for the same improvement in blood sugar. I'm looking for the same goals for your hemoglobin A1C to be below 7. If you are doing that with what you are doing, let's go. The other thing I say, well, the only difference between, many pharmaceuticals have their roots in plants, no pun intended. But anyway, the only thing I would say is the difference between pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals is we know what toxicities I should screen for. I know what side effects I should warn you about, and when to switch. And I know the interval at which I should be testing certain things might cause high potassium. I said, well, if I'm putting you on this, let me check your potassium in 3 months. Because I don't know what the therapeutic dose is and what the toxic dose is of what you're doing, I'm like, every 6 months or so, let's just check a kidney and liver and a blood count, just to make sure. So they're going to take their anti-inflammatory to answer the question. They like cinnamon, turmeric, berberine, and what was the other one? Ginger. So screen, make sure you don't have any complications, and hold yourself to the same goals. In your diabetes patient, we want that A1C less than 7. And lastly, or fourthly, or fifthly, people who are into taking herbal remedies are often in a place where they're motivated anyway. So you will find that they're also doing the things that you recommend. They're walking 20 minutes a day, because they're like, well, they're in this holistic wellness space. And so sometimes the supplements that they're interested in are only one manifestation of all of the other things that they're trying to do. So I try not to discourage people unless I have a specific reason for them not to do that. What do you think?
My question is, as a doctor, what exactly is being referred? Is it just the testing for prevention? Is it just the testing, or is it actual medication, or is it a regimen?
No, say that again. What is being
referred for prevention? Is it testing, dietary, or
You mean what am I recommending?
Yeah. Is it dietary regimen, or what exactly? Or is it medication?
For prevention of diabetes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a great question. It depends on the patient. It depends. For the treatment of diabetes and for the prevention of diabetes, lifestyle recommendations are actually extreme. No, not lifestyle recommendations. Implementation of lifestyle changes are extremely effective. Okay. So when we're talking about 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity exercise, we're talking about, like we said, fist size carbs. Half your plate is veggies, green and leafy or cooked, and 1 palm size protein. Mm-hmm. If we're doing this and we are following up regularly, we're going to see improvement, or at the very least, we'll see that you're staying where you are and your blood sugars aren't going up. Mm. The key to what I said is the implementation of the stuff. Mm-hmm. So if I have a patient who's like, let's do it, see you in 2 months, see you in 3 months, recheck your labs, and follow up is important, right? If I have a patient who says, doc, I ain't doing that. They might say, I am not. I have 2 jobs. I have this many children. I'm not going to exercise for 45 minutes. I'm not going to sit there and watch that person's diabetes pre-diabetes even deteriorate into diabetes or uncontrolled diabetes. I would actually treat that person with medications, prevent the development of diabetes, because they are simply unable to do physically and lifestyle wise what is going to be effective for them. So I'm not going to beat you with the same stick. If it's not working, why am I going to keep eating this plan? The plan isn't working. So initially lifestyle. Okay. Sometimes both, and sometimes meds.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Now I have a question to piggyback off of that question. And that was a great question. If you are on the medicine and your A1C comes back down, do you take the person off the medicine? Because, and I've been telling my business all day today. So I've been in the pre-diabetic range, and the doctor put me on a medication because at the time I did not have time to get in 150 minutes a week, but I do now. But would put me on the medicine, the A1C would drop back down to the normal range. Once she took me off, that's when she would pull me off. Then it would go back up. She'd put me back on. So it was this off and on, off and on. Is that damaging someone if that is happening? Or would you switch and be like, let's look at what you're eating, look at whatever other lifestyle changes?
Right. So if we put you on something, we put our hand in our magic bag and we pulled out a medication for you to take once a day to help you along with your intermittent lifestyle regimen, my conclusion would be that the medication is assisting you in keeping your A1C normal. I would leave you on the medication. I would leave you there, keep that A1C consistently below 7 or where it was, below 6.5. If you were saying you were no longer 5.7 to 6.4. Anyway, it depends on where you were. Yeah. If you're diabetic, I'm keeping you below 7 or even below 6.5 if I have no reason. And I would leave you there because we don't want the yo-yoing. And what we want is the longest amount of time at the beginning of a diagnosis under good control. Because when we first get a diagnosis, the longer we can keep a patient under excellent diabetes control, even if they lost control later, it's called like a legacy effect. Those patients have a lower risk of complications later on. So I would say, oh, where's our friend?
Oh,
I would say, unless you have consistently lowered your A1C with continued demonstrated consistent lifestyle modification, and
Mhm.
that A1C just keeps going down, I might take you off and see if you're able to maintain it. But if we've yo-yoed a couple of times, stay on it, live your best life, do your
Mhm.
exercise, keep that A1C down, prevent the development of complications. Welcome back. We missed you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Sorry.
welcome back.
So the name of the game is prevention, 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 and prevention. Stay
Yes.
on it. Keep the A1C low as long as there are no complications from the medicine.
I see a couple other questions. Let's see. Both of these are from Charlotte. She wants to know counting calories or carbohydrates, and can diabetes be reversed without taking medication?
I'll leave the carbs to you first. Carbs and that.
You're talking. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would say counting. I would say carbs.
Mhm.
Being aware of your carb intake before counting calories, because everything has calories. You know, fruits, vegetables that you're supposed to be ingesting has calories. So I would say watching your carbohydrates.
Okay. And let me see. That was. I already forgot the
Yeah,
question. Oh, can diabetes be reversed without taking medication?
yes and no. So yes and no. So technically we can achieve, depending on the stage of diabetes and how long it's been going on, and the reserve function or the residual function of your pancreas, for argument's sake, yes, the diagnosis of diabetes can be removed if your A1C, of course, drops below 6.5, your fasting blood sugar drops below 100. On paper, you are not diabetic, right? But you did some things. You did some things to reverse the diabetes and normalize your numbers. If you stopped doing those things, those numbers are coming back. And so, very rarely will I tell a patient that they are cured of diabetes, because it switches something in their brain where they say, oh, well, I'm cured now, back to my best life. And they go back to the behaviors that caused the development of the diabetes in the first place. So I would refer to you as lifestyle controlled or diet controlled, to remind you that the only reason you're controlled or not diabetic or keeping your numbers below range is because of the lifestyle changes that you made that must persist. Once you change your mind and decide you're cured, and you go back to your double sandwich thingy thing, and we recheck the A1C, it's probably going to come back.
Mhm. Goodness, this hour is coming by quick. I did want to get this question in before we wrap, but I was curious as how, and this is for both of you, how does stress, depression, or anxiety impact diabetes, and what coping tools do you recommend? Maya, we'll start with you.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, stress. How does stress and what else? Excuse me.
Stress, depression, anxiety, all of the things that just have you all just
Yes.
impact your mental health.
So stress, depression, anxiety, stress in particular can raise your cortisol levels,
Mhm.
which also increases the risk of diabetes. So I I like meditation. I know a lot of people don't, but I would refer people to meditation, changing the music you listen to something more peacefully, taking deep breaths, just learning how to take deep breaths throughout the day instead of being reactionary, learning how to be more proactive, catching yourself before you react to things that you normally would be triggered by, changing your environment, grounding in nature. There's research that proves that grounding, which is, you know, going on some earth, some grass, some nature,
Mhm.
with your feet, bare feet, that
Right.
it can actually improve your health. Um, so grounding, taking deep breaths, your posture, straightening up your posture, rolling your shoulders back, taking a deep breath. Um, but most of all, I would say, you know, switching your mindset from the things that you normally allow yourself to be triggered by and seeing it in a different light, because you want to change the level of stress you react to. So those are some things I would definitely recommend.
Those are some great ones. Yeah, meditation. I'm just been getting into that one, and I would say if it's hard for you to do it at home, like it is for me, I actually go to a yoga studio weekly for meditation class because I'm like I'll go to sleep if I do it at home. And yoga has been very helpful with
Absolutely.
reducing stress. Yeah, those are some great ones. Thank you,
Yeah,
Doc.
which also increases your activity, the yoga element.
Mhm. Yeah, Dr. Parker Curling, did you have any to add
Just a
to that?
small addition in that adopting those stress management techniques
Mhm.
allows you to have more in your armamentarium of what you do to manage stress outside of eating. So if you're anything like me and many of us, when we're stressed, we need a drink, we need something to eat, we need a sugary beverage, we need a soda, we need something to get that nice endorphin fix. So
Mm.
I'm going to have to defer to my colleague for all of the alternative stress management techniques that takes us away from the self-destructive behaviors that would
Mhm.
counteract the hard work we're doing to control the diabetes. So yes, stress can affect your diabetes from the cortisol in and of itself and from the behaviors that we engage in to manage the stress. So
Mm.
thank you for that.
That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So Maya, what do we do if we're like, I've had a rough day, I need a drink, I need this ice
right.
cream?
Yeah,
What do we
exactly.
do? Is that when we say, let me go get somewhere and meditate?
This is hard. I'm not gonna lie. I'm somebody who's very fanatical. Once I make a decision,
Mhm.
I'm very disciplined. So I have to kind of like put myself in that mindset, of somebody who normally struggles, who lacks discipline. Um,
Mhm.
so for instance, somebody who would grab, a bottle of alcohol and
Yeah.
Mhm.
say, let me take a drink. At this point, you have to manage your mindset and also education. You have to educate yourself on how this substance or these foods are actually affecting me. When I
Yeah.
made dietary changes as a teenager, when I changed from eating everything to then becoming vegan as a teenager, because I did the research, I learned how it affects my body physiologically. I learned how it affects my peace. So I think education is important. I can beat you in your head all day and tell you, meditate and breathe and be at peace with yourself. But if you're not educating yourself, then you really won't know why you're doing this.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great point. That's a great point. Gosh, this conversation is so good.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I'm like, let's see. I think we have one more question from the audience, and then I have one more question for you guys. Charlotte, you got great questions tonight. What's the best medication to take for type 2 diabetes?
You know what? That's an interesting question. That's an interesting question because guidelines have been shifting. There used to be a best medication. It used to be that the treatment algorithm that we would follow is this medication first, this medication you add on second, this medication you add on third.
Hmm.
Um, but now the shift is more toward what's happening with this patient. So it's more individualized care. And I'll give you examples. If a patient has a history of heart failure, we will try to find a diabetes medication that has also had proven benefit in patients with heart failure to reduce hospitalizations, to reduce cardiovascular death. So that patient's first medication might be completely different from someone's first medication who might be struggling with overweight and obesity. I might choose a medication, number one, that does not predispose to weight gain. And I might also be inclined to choose a diabetes medication that predisposes to weight loss. If someone has chronic kidney disease or has protein in the urine, which is a sign that diabetes is affecting the kidney function, their choice of medication might be a medication that treats diabetes, but also has proven renal or kidney protective effects. So that question is a difficult one because traditionally we knew what we added first, we knew what we added second. Now depends on that patient that walks in the door. So it depends on the particulars of your physical exam and your laboratory findings. And that is what will tailor what I would select first, second, or third for you. And the hemoglobin A1C too. And how much lowering do I expect each of these medications to effect for you? So that's an An easy one and a tough one, in that I can't give you a blanket answer anymore. 7 years ago, 10 years, I might have been able to give you a blanket. Now it's completely shifting, as it should, I suppose, to individualized recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
That's the type of answer we would want,
Right.
as patients, a doctor who's going to customize in accordance to our bodies and our conditions. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree. So for the last question, Charlotte, you're welcome. She says thank you all for. She really appreciates you answering
Thanks
all her
for asking.
questions. Yeah, thank you, Charlotte, for asking such amazing questions. As we are wrapping up this amazing summit, I have to ask both of you, and I'm going to start with you, Mayat. What's one thing that every woman watching can do this week? What's one thing they can do this week to take control of her health?
One simple thing every woman can do this week to take control of her health is breathe. Breathe deeply. You don't have to close your eyes.
Oh, I did.
You can just take a deep breath, inhaling deeply and exhaling. And that alone increases your sense of peace. It helps with digestion. It centers you. Learning just to take random deep breaths is one thing they can do.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Felt nice.
Yes, Dr. Parker Curling, what's one thing every woman watching can do this week?
So hard. If I had to choose one, I would say swap out the sugary beverages for water for everybody in the house. Swap out the sugary beverages for water. That's the one thing, if I had to do it today, that I would do. Tomorrow. We said tomorrow. So drink whatever you got tonight, because tomorrow we're doing water.
Nice.
Couple of hours. Water.
Well, I want to thank both of you for joining us for such an amazing panel. I've learned a lot, and I think the audience definitely has learned a lot. I see a lot of people in the comments now saying lots of important information was given tonight. So thank you both so much. How can people find you if they have more questions?
I'm Ma'at Petrova on all social media platforms.
Okay. And I'm at _ Beyond the Knowledge on Instagram and Beyond the Knowledge on Facebook. And
perfect.
Dr. Parker Curling on, was that LinkedIn? Christine Parker Curling.
Okay.
So yes, thank you. We're all there.
Yes. Well, for more information and resources and articles on diabetes and taking control of your health, you can head to blackdoctor.org. There's, like I said, a lot of articles there. And if you missed any of tonight's earlier panels, make sure you go back and watch those. They're, still there on Facebook and on the YouTube channel. So you can make sure you share those with your network as well. So they're full of powerful insights that you don't want to miss. So I want to thank you both again and thank the audience for watching. This has been a great Women's Health Summit. So thank you again and have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.